I'm Karanjot Jaswal. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Cinchy. And I'm here today to talk to you about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is the paradigm of data collaboration and what that means to financial services. When you think about the original promise of technology, it was really to simplify things, to make people's lives better, make them easier. But in my experience, that hasn't always been the case, especially when you think about enterprise software. So prior to Cinchy, my background was in financial services. I worked at a number of large global financial institutions in technology. I initially started off my career as a developer, building technology solutions, and later progressed to managing the delivery of large, complex, transformational change. Now, when I think back to my early days in capital markets, it felt something like this, minus the hat, although that would have looked good on me. But kidding aside, it really was a simpler time. When you think about delivering technology even a decade ago, a lot of the considerations that we have today, a lot of the control considerations simply didn't exist. Even data governance as a discipline wasn't nearly as mature as it is today. And the requirements that stem from that were not as sophisticated either. So if you were to contrast now delivering a technology solution, let's say 10 years ago versus today, the same solution, what's mind-boggling is that it is actually more work now. It costs more, it takes more time. And that is because of the added layers of complexity. And these are just a handful of examples. You have data governance requirements, and then you have enterprise alignment as well. Maybe your organization has stood up a data lake, and now you have a mandate that all new applications must actually feed data into that lake in order to ensure that you have comprehensive coverage. Maybe you've stood up an API gateway, and you now have a mandate for every new solution to ensure that they integrate with that API gateway. And again, these are just a handful of examples, and that's over the course of 10 years. Imagine now what this would look like as technology continues to progress, 5 years out or another 10 years out. It's continuing to get more and more complex, and that is actually the scariest part about this, especially when you factor in now industry movements, when you think about how much more technology you're going to be producing as a result of, let's say, open banking, regulatory change, digital transformation. That is an added cost for every solution that you create. Multiply that by every net new solution, and think about how it's going to evolve as well. There's an individual by the name of Joseph Tainter who wrote a book called The Collapse of Complex Societies. And in that, he paints a very interesting picture. It talks about the level of complexity versus the benefits of complexity. And in this picture, what it shows is that when you take a very simple ecosystem or a simple environment and you begin to add complexity into it, there's actually a substantial benefit to doing that. And that's where you see a fairly steep slope on your curve. Over time, when you continue to add complexity, what happens is that your benefits slow down. So there's diminishing returns from that complexity until you reach now a critical point. And once you hit this critical point, your benefits actually begin to turn against you. Now what that means is you have a negative marginal return on your added complexity. And if you still keep going, you ultimately find that the system collapses onto itself. That's a very scary picture. But what does it mean in the context of financial services? Well, as we've seen, the delivery of technology solutions is becoming progressively more and more complex. So in that type of an environment, assuming you let that complexity go on, and I'll let you decide where you feel your particular organization is on this curve, but assume you continue to add complexity, at some point in the future, it becomes an existential threat for your organization. And while that may sound like a very extreme position to take, that complexity is an existential threat for an incumbent financial institution, when you think about what it means to stay competitive in the marketplace, what you need to do is continue to innovate, of course. And in order to be able to innovate, you need to continue to deliver technology change and be able to execute against your innovative ideas. This complexity is an impediment against your ability to be able to deliver technology solutions. But what you'll notice now is that this diagram, nowhere on this curve does it actually speak to time. And what that means is that there is actually hope. As you change your circumstances, as you reduce your overall level of complexity, you're able to shift your position on this curve. And you can change then, of course, the outcome. But in order to do that, what you need to do is really understand the root cause. Why has technology become so complex? So when you think now about 2 slides ago, where we painted a picture of delivering the same technology solution 10 years ago versus delivering that today, what was the difference there? The difference was that we've added layers of complexity. We've essentially introduced incremental work. When it comes to your data governance requirements, that is incremental work. When it comes to your enterprise alignment, such as your data strategy alignment or your API strategy alignment, that is incremental work. We've not evolved how you deliver that base solution. We've simply added layers on top of that. And that is a fundamental flaw in the design. If you want to simplify your organization, what you need to do is change how you deliver technology. It's not about plugging a gap and introducing a Band-Aid solution on top of how you operate today. So what do I mean by that in terms of changing how you deliver technology today? Well, what I mean is that today you deliver technology in the form of applications. That is how you build technology solutions. You stand up new applications. And those applications are actually what create complexity inside of your organization. That is because applications as a paradigm was never actually designed to respect data. Think about how long applications have been around and contrast that with how long have we actually appreciated data to the extent that we do today, where you may have even heard the term data is the new oil. People talk about the significance of that, but applications haven't fundamentally evolved over the past 40 years. So there's 3 challenges that exist with applications when it comes to data. The first is fairly well understood, is that applications create data silos. Now, your organization today probably has hundreds, maybe even thousands of different systems that you use to run your business. Each one manages its own data inside of its application-specific database. Now, you've taken your entire organization's data, which should be all interconnected, and carved it up into thousands of different pieces. And in order to overcome that, that's why you probably spend nearly 1/3 of your IT change budget on an annual basis. Think about how many millions of dollars that amounts to, performing integration. The second issue is that they limit data usability. Now, when you think about applications, people always think about them as being an enabler. People think about them as being a positive thing. They let me interact with my data and manage my data. But they also control that experience. Even if you have access to information, it doesn't mean that you're able to interact with that data, because they are the only way for you to be able to get at it. Now, to illustrate that, let's take a very simple example. If you look at your email application, maybe inside your organization you use Outlook. Outlook, as an email application, obviously allows you to manage your emails, but in addition to that, it also has your contact information. And Outlook as an application, even though you have access to the data, doesn't allow you to do something as simple as send an email to all of your contacts that live in the city of New York. Now, you may or may not care about that particular use case, but that's just one example of hundreds of things that you cannot do with your own data, because that application restricts you from being able to do it. And in order for you to be able to do that, either you build a new application to enable you to do it and extract that data and integrate it in from Outlook, or alternatively, you go back to Microsoft and say, can you change your application, issue a new release, give me that one feature that I want right now. And then after that, the next time I want to be able to use my data for something else, I also have to come up with a new solution for it. The third issue is that they prevent data controls. And this stems from the fragmentation that applications create. Because your data is copied all over the place, it is virtually impossible to control access to your data. That's because access is now governed. Your access rules are implemented inside of applications. And if I take a sensitive piece of information and I copy that across 20 or even 200 different applications inside your organization, that means that I need to implement the same rules to control access to that data 20 times or 200 times. That is virtually impossible to manage at scale. And that is why it's a broken model. It also is misaligned with how you think about data governance. You think about your data stewards as having ownership over data. And you think about, let's say, even employee information, you probably have a steward for that data. And now the scope of that steward's responsibility is typically within the book of record for that particular data set. But what happens when it's copied downstream to 50 other places? They lose sight of that, they lose control of that. Now, many of these technologies you've probably rolled out within your organization, and people believe that they are actually addressing or overcoming some of the challenges that we saw on the previous slide by leveraging these technologies. But in reality, you're not actually addressing the root cause. You're still working around those problems. You are working around the symptoms. Because each one of these, just like the same thing that we saw on the previous slides where you were adding layers of complexity, each one of these is also adding layers of complexity. They're adding, they're not taking away. It's not fundamentally changing how you deliver your solution. If I introduce a data lake, it's more work. If I introduce a data warehouse, it's more work. None of these are simplifying. Now, collaboration, on the other hand, has proven to be a great simplifier within the enterprise. And we've seen that when it comes to documents and how we work on them, when it comes to messaging, meetings, or projects. Now, something magical happens when you take that paradigm of collaboration and apply that to data. If you think about Google Docs as an example, prior to Google Docs existing, you had individuals working on documents on their respective machines. They were manually managing versions of it. They were emailing copies back and forth. Think about how cumbersome that process was and how big of a shift and how much productivity gain there was by introducing a document collaboration platform. Well, there's a lot more data than there is documents. So think about the impact that being able to enable real-time collaboration on your data will have for your business. So let's now take a look at how data collaboration addresses those three challenges that we talked about. So I'm going to contrast first data sharing versus data collaboration. And data sharing is really what we do when we have applications and are integrating them together. Sharing, the word itself sounds like a very positive thing. And in the real world, it is. If I'm sharing a pen with you, guess what? There's only one pen. But if I'm sharing data with you, I'm actually giving you a copy of that data. And that's what's fundamentally broken when it comes to this. So let's take a simple example where we have an environment that has 4 applications. Now, these 4 applications, I probably integrate them together inside my organization using a combination of ETLs and APIs. Of course, in order to enable reporting and analytics, I stand up either a data lake or a data warehouse in order to create a centralized copy of this data for read purposes. If I introduce a 5th solution into the mix, what happens is it goes through the same process. Now, just with 5 applications, look at that web of complexity. Imagine that now for an organization that has hundreds or thousands, what that web would look like. And the other key point here is that we've actually separated out the operational use of data and the analytical use of data, or the reporting use of data. Those are 2 independent things now. You have a snapshot of information coming into your data lake or warehouse for reporting. Those 2 things have not been unified. Data collaboration, on the other hand, is centered around managing your information as a network. And what it enables you to do is have any solution interact directly with that network, where it can extend the network, or it can source information from that network. When you add a 5th solution into the mix, that 5th solution, again, just connects directly to the network. And a good analogy for this is if you think about the laptop that's being used to power this presentation. That laptop has connectivity to billions of other devices in the world. And the way we enable that is not through point-to-point connections. That, of course, would never scale. But that's what the left-hand side diagram is. It is point-to-point connections. We do that by connecting this laptop to a network and then having that network in turn connect into other networks, forming what we today call the internet. And that's had such a transformative impact on the world. Now, it's not just that. That's not the only network we have. If you think about the power grid as an example and how that has revolutionized the world. Prior to the power grid, which is effectively a network, factories generated their own power. So this has the same level of impact, potentially even greater, when you form this network of data. And data collaboration is only possible with a data network. Now, this is a snapshot of a data collaboration network. And what you're seeing is each node is a data set. It's a table, rows and columns. And the lines between them are actually links. So think about like a hyperlink in the context of the internet. It's the same exact concept. But what you're establishing a link between here is data. And that is very, very powerful, to be able to link data together, whether that's rows of data, columns of data. The second challenge that we talked about was the fact that applications limit your usability or they limit how you can use your data. Now, the reason for that actually is because code is complex, it's expensive to change. If you compare that against how the human brain functions, logic is actually a function of the data itself. Now, that's a very abstract concept, but if you try to apply that to this context, what it really means is that data becomes the application, or data is the application. So let's take a look at what that looks like. It's shifting from a model where you have an app for everything, where users interact with rigid and limited application experiences that have been created with code, and that in turn interacts with your data. So shifting away from that model to one that looks more like this, where you have a data network that manages all of your information, and you have what's called data experiences that now sit on top of that network and allow you to interact with it. What's unique about this is if you look at, for example, the third and fourth application on the left picture, both of them have red circles inside of their database. Essentially what that means is that they've been integrated together in some capacity, and that red circle is a data set that exists in both. Now, on the right-hand side, the way that would work is two independent experiences, which allow you to interact with your data in a certain way, can point to the same data set. And that's incredibly powerful because that's what we mean by real-time data collaboration. So you have many different ways of being able to interact with the same data, but there is only ever one copy of that data. There is only ever one instance of that data. The third challenge we talked about was controls. And of course, we know, especially in a highly regulated industry, how incredibly important that is. Whoever controls your data has control over you. That's a very true statement. Well, data collaboration, it embeds cellular level control. Within the data network itself, that's the layer at which the controls are implemented. And that's, again, very unique. Because in the traditional paradigm, in the application-centric paradigm, you build your entitlements and all of your control logic into the individual applications. They do not exist at your data layer. Here, by shifting that to the data layer, what it allows you to do is provide access to data instead of providing copies. You can have very granular data access policies, and controls like data versioning or approvals can actually be built in to the platform itself. So you don't need to go and solution that independently for every single application or every single business solution that you're trying to create. Now you may be wondering, Today, you have an organization at scale. You, again, have your hundreds or potentially thousands of different applications. This is radically different from that paradigm in terms of how you would deliver technology solutions. So how does an organization, an existing organization, go about actually realizing the potential of data collaboration? Well, you don't necessarily need to try to evolve the entire organization all at once. You can actually transform the organization incrementally. And that is the beauty of data collaboration, is it allows you to simplify and accelerate projects that you're already planning, the projects that you're going to deliver anyway. Each initiative will go faster as a result of the simplification that this paradigm provides. And each project generates what we call network effects, essentially making your data more accessible, secure, and connected. So you're getting a compounding benefit for every new solution that you create on the platform. If you think about the effort now to deliver a solution, so with the app-centric approach, we had seen layers of added complexity, things like data governance requirements, your enterprise alignment, and here there's an extra box for integration. How that's different from data collaboration is that all of these common requirements are dramatically simplified by addressing them once. So this paradigm of data collaboration allows you to solution that one time, rather than having each and every individual application or each and every individual business solution deliver that their own way. And now that offers dramatic savings when it comes to time to market. So what does this all mean to your business? Well, of course, as we had seen, you can accelerate the delivery of technology solutions, which is incredibly important given the amount of new solutions your organization is going to need to create as a result of, again, all of the industry movements that are happening, whether that's the open banking, the regulatory change, whether that's your digital transformation. You eliminate the need to do data integration because any data that exists on the network no longer requires any integration. You simply provide access. You centralize data security. Now this is incredibly powerful because what it does is, for the first time ever, it allows owners to actually manage access to their own data. And any individual data owner can now control who has access to their data, both to view and to change, and they can take that away. You can democratize your data, which today is incredibly challenging. If you think about even discovering data within the organization, how difficult is that? Just trying to stand up something as simple as like a data dictionary for people to be able to understand where information is, let alone actually try to get access to it. It is nearly impossible to practically implement. And with a data network, you can actually finally democratize your data and automate data governance, because that network now understands its own structure, and it's able to make that information available in order to help you automate that data governance. And a lot of the control considerations that you have, whether that's things like audit-related controls, whether that's versioning information that you need, that can all be built in to the underlying platform. The last one is operationalizing AI. So we all know how incredibly important operationalizing AI is for your business. You're going to need it in order to improve your customer experiences. You're going to need it in order to improve your operations as well. But one of the biggest challenges that exists today is that because your data is so fragmented, being able to bring that together in order to develop models, that's of course a massive challenge. But even once you've successfully done that, let's say you've gotten to the point where you've done your feature engineering, you've created a model, and now you want to take that and go and deploy it. Well, oftentimes what happens is every time you want to roll out a solution, you're standing up a new technology solution in order to go and do that. That is an incredibly inefficient way of operationalizing your AI, because it's not one strategy to do it. It is point solutions for every time you've been able to successfully develop a model. That changes with this paradigm of data collaboration, because your AI can now act on that data network. And through this paradigm of having real-time collaboration on your data, it means that it is able to impact that data directly in place. Now, when you think about the history of technology, back in the 50s, mainframes became commercially available for the first time ever. And that had a significant impact on how people operate their businesses. And we entered into essentially the mainframe era. It gave organizations a level of agility that wasn't possible before. In the late 70s, first relational database came out, and we shifted into the application era. We started to create distributed applications. Data collaboration is the next big shift. So with the first data collaboration platform, that's really shepherding us into that data collaboration era and opening up a whole lot of possibilities that were never, that you couldn't execute on before. Now, data collaboration as a paradigm provides authentic simplicity. So when you think about where we were as it relates to our understanding of data, we started from a position of ignorance, and then obviously that evolved, and now we find ourselves at sort of point C with peak complexity. Data collaboration as a paradigm provides you with that authentic simplicity, and the way that you roll that out is really that enlightened simplification. So I had mentioned that my organization that I co-founded is Cinchy. It's actually a play on the word simple, and data collaboration as a paradigm, it really is all about making things simple. So thank you guys. Welcome to the data collaboration era. And if you'd like to learn more, please do visit Cinchy at booth P6. We're in aisle 1500. Thank you.